tell us who you are and your ties to Israel.
My name is Itai Joseph. I'm from Ohio. My ties to Israel involve a birthright trip. Birthright is a free trip offered through donors through the Israeli government to mostly Jewish Americans, but also Jews from around the world who haven't had prior exposure to Israel. So I did that 2 years ago. That was like a 10-day trip, and I was at a yeshiva studying the oral, or really just the Torah, but specifically like oral, or more specifically oral Torah. So I was there for 2 months this summer.
What made you decide to study in Jerusalem?
So I've been trying to learn more about my Jewish heritage and the tradition of learning that's been going on for the last several thousands of years. And the heart of learning, and especially like kids my age, like seeking authentic Torah scholarship, are going to Israel, and the most concentrated part of learning is in Jerusalem. So Jerusalem's the home of like monotheistic thought. It's like it's the gem of, it's like the, it's not, I don't want to just call it like a totem, but Jerusalem's like the geographical heart of Judaism.
When was the first time you remember becoming aware of the conflict? And what was your first impression of it?
It's a good question. I think, going to like a Jewish day school growing up, there's definitely a dialogue going on from a pretty early age, probably from 2nd or 3rd grade is maybe the early, I can't remember any like specific moments, but I do remember having like kind of a vague awareness of this kind of continuous string of wars and hostility. I actually remember thinking when I was like pretty young that I was thinking about like going to war and like going to like the American military with kind of a frame of reference being like the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, thinking like I hope there are no wars here. But that's just kind of what triggers the memory is like thinking about war. And I remember that memory is kind of associated with the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
What are your current feelings regarding the conflict?
My current feelings, honestly I don't have enough information, I think, to justify any feelings. I don't have really objective knowledge of both sides to the degree with which to make an intellectual decision. I'm not sure how my brother feels. I think my parents, they're definitely in support of Israel. I think when they vote politically in the States, they're considering like Israeli support from whoever's in power over here. So I don't know like the nuances of their feelings in terms of the conflict. It's not something we talk about at home, but I know they're in favor of supporting Israel from here.
So kind of going off of that, do you think living in the U.S. can change the way that we perceive the conflict?
In terms of like how we receive information about the conflict, like living in the U.S., being exposed to U.S. media?
Absolutely.
I think our only conception of the conflict are from media exposure. Unless you're like going in like studying the conflict, you probably are receiving your conflict information from the media, or unless you like know someone who's more intimately involved. So I think the media 100% shapes our conceptions of the conflict, and whichever media you're subscribed to is how you're receiving information. So that completely shapes your perception of the conflict.
So my name is Noura Ebrahim. I'm 22 years old. I'm a graduate student at Roosevelt University. I'm a Palestinian American. I was born and raised in Chicago, but spent a lot of time in Palestine with my family. The way that we view the conflict, the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, is much like how many other Palestinians view the conflict. We see it as our homeland was taken from us. Many of us lost our houses and family members and our rights, our basic human rights. So it's a very depressing subject, although it is spoken about a lot within Palestinian families. I grew up learning about the Palestinian conflict, hearing about it, experiencing it. My family makes it a point to teach us where we came from and what is happening there. We see it as strengthening us as people, bringing us together, strengthening our faith. The first time I remember being aware of the conflict was probably, like I said, I grew up hearing about the conflict, so I was very young. But really understanding it and understanding the politics of it was probably in high school. No one pushed me to do it. I think I woke up one day and I was like, I should learn more about it. So I did my own research. It was probably like my sophomore year of high school, so I was about 16 or 17 years old. That's really when I got into the history and the politics and seeing what I can do to help the people. I started going to more protests in the city. I've started joining different activist groups. It's a little hard when you're in high school trying to do as much as you can because you don't have as much freedom as you do once you're an adult in college. But yeah, so I would say high school.
And what were your first impressions of the conflict?
I was sad because I see myself as extremely fortunate because my family came here. They brought us here and we were able to live here with all the basic human rights that everyone is born and deserve to live with. So it made me really sad to see these people who I'm so strongly connected to going through such hard times. So yeah.
What are your major concerns that are brought up by your family members?
So there's two sides that people talk about the conflict, either the political aspect or the humanitarian aspect. And my family is big on human rights and what's happening to the people and the struggles that they face daily living. So a lot of times we talk about how we can help improve their lives and what we can do as Palestinians living in America to help our brothers and sisters in Palestine. So we talk mostly about just what's going on with the people, and we are a political family, but we try, at this point of time in the conflict, we try to focus mostly on bettering the lives of the people, because it's been happening for so long. There's not much you could do about the politics that are happening on there unless you're the president or in the political system, which we're not. We're all the way here. So so mostly what we talk about is just how we can help our people there.
Do you think that living in the United States changes the way that you perceive the conflict? And if so, in what ways?
It's funny because when I go to Palestine and I talk to my peers there and we talk about the conflict, they're surprised that I know so much. So I don't think it does. I mean, other than the fact that we're not living and experiencing what they're going through, but we understand and we learn about it and we hear about it. And our families have experienced it as well, like my parents. So, and I go there and I see it, so I experience it firsthand. And even though I'm an American, I'm still Palestinian, so when I'm there, I'm treated like the rest of them. I have no benefits, no nothing.
Well, how do you think that American politics and media show the Israeli-Palestinian conflict?
They don't. It's either they don't show anything about it, or it's very extremely one-sided.
Was the conflict ever brought up at yeshiva, or perceptions of the conflict ever talked amongst other students or teachers?
I think, yeah, so kids talk about the conflict occasionally. To be honest, it's not really talked about much at all. The focus there is on Torah study, and the conflict is irrelevant to studying Torah. So the rabbis aren't interested in talking about it with you. They're not interested in making it like a kind of a present phenomenon in everyone's minds. You're there for a very specific reason. So if kids are passionate about it, outside of class, you might have some individual or interpersonal discussions, but otherwise it's not really the focus there.
Do you remember any of those interpersonal discussions or viewpoints?
I remember one kid. I didn't really get a lot of viewpoints. I know one kid was really passionate about really passionate about the army and what the army was doing, and people fighting for Israel's independence as a nation are looking at it from sometimes a messianic perspective. Like the Jews are coming back to Israel, like the end term of like this long progression of human history, about 6,000 years according to tradition, is like reaching its climactic like messianic point, and part of that entails the Jewish people being in Israel, and so people who understand the situation in that way. Some people, I guess there's so many perspectives. It's incredible, but people definitely support the army for religious reasons and with an idea of it being the natural progression of human history.
So, what activist groups have you been a member of?
Okay. So the Palestinian Children Relief Fund is an organization, a nonprofit organization that helps supply medical aid and assistance and supplies to the Palestinian children. Also, not just the Palestinian children, but the children of Iraq and Lebanon and Syria. Team Palestine is more of a running organization. So we run under the name of Palestine, and we're connected to the PCRF. So all the money that we collect goes straight to the Palestinian Children Relief Fund. So we run in different 5Ks, we run in the Chicago Marathon, and the whole point of that is to spread awareness in a different way, to show that we're active people and we're not lazy, and we're running for the Palestinian people. And we always have Palestine on our shirt. We're very proud of it.
And what influenced you to join all these organizations and help?
I guess the obvious answer would be because I'm Palestinian, but I make it a point to let people know that we're human first, no matter what. And I do have this connection because I am a Palestinian, my family is from there, and I've experienced and I've seen what the people are going through. But at the same time, they're human beings. And I work with different organizations, not just Palestinian organizations. I try to help people as much as I can, no matter what. Because it's a point. You have to prove a point. If you're going to fight for one group of people, you have to fight for them all.
And how did the local media in Palestine portray this conflict and issues surrounding it?
In Palestine?
Yeah.
No matter how they portray it, it's not shown anywhere. I mean, there's times where I go to protests in Palestine and there's like rows of like 20, 30 journalists on the sidelines, and I'll talk to them, they're like, it doesn't even matter. I do this because this is my job and it gives me a sense of me doing something for my people, but it doesn't even matter because no one's going to even hear me. No one's going to see this. And they portray it the way that it's seen through Palestinian eyes. And it's sad because no one sees that.
Is there, when you were there, did you recognize any challenges that Arab Palestinians or Israelis might face due to the conflict?
Challenges as a result of the conflict?
Mm-hmm. Like in the way of living or just experiencing it?
Well, I did walk through, so I spent most of the time in Jewish neighborhoods. I was in an Arab neighborhood, and yeah, I was walking through it, actually, like going to someone's Shabbat lunch with the father of his household. And my buddy and I were walking through this neighborhood with him, and he carries a gun through the neighborhood because not then because it was Shabbat. You don't carry on Shabbat, but they're stories of a lot of hostile action on the part of the Arab community who's living in the neighborhood against Jews just passing by. Like he was driving to the street one day and someone threw a huge stone through his car window, just because he was Jewish. So everything's kind of different there. Like they have different kind of buses going through there. Like the buses are a little lower grade. You see you don't see police cars really anywhere else. You see soldiers walking around everywhere, Israeli soldiers. But here you saw Israeli police cars with graded metal in front of their windows, in front of the car windows. So they're more like stone resistant or bullet resistant or whatever. So it just seems like there's more risk involved when you're in that was at least like that was one Arab neighborhood on, I think, in East Jerusalem. But that was my only exposure, and that was my, I had like a limited story to hear. So otherwise, I was in Jewish neighborhoods and everything's extremely comfortable, extremely seemingly safe. I mean, there are definitely incidents, but no one's like freaking out on the street. People are just going about their lives in a pretty relaxed way.
And when you were in Palestine, helping one of those organizations, what was everyday life like for you?
So as a Palestinian going to Palestine, it's difficult. You're seen as someone, you're not seen as human. You're not treated like a human. I hope to God people don't treat humans the way that we get treated. I'll give you an example. So when I went in 2012, on my way to Palestine, I went through the Ben Gurion airport, which is an Israeli airport. Because I'm able to do that because I have an American passport. And either way you go into Palestine, if you go from the Jordanian border or if you go through Israel, it's just a horrible experience. You're taken under questioning for so long. I waited maybe 3 hours, and that's the shortest. There were people in the room with me who were there for 6 hours. They put me aside and they're like, we're gonna have to question you. So I waited in that room with no answers for an hour. And then finally they came and a soldier came and got me to ask me a few questions. So he took me to his office and I sat across from him on the desk and he sat with a computer. So he asked me first what my name was and then why I was here. I couldn't tell him I was here to help the organization. I told him I was just here to visit my family. So because there's cases where they just send people back and you don't want to take that 11-hour flight back and you're going to be extremely angry. So, and then he started asking me questions like, what's your mother's name? What's your father's name? What's your grandfather's name? What's your grandmother's name? What's your great-grandfather's name? What's your great-great-grandfather? These are things I don't even know. I don't know what my great-grandfather's second cousin removed's uncle name. You know what I mean? So he's asking me all these questions, and like I answered the best I could. And then he'll be like, he'll turn the screen, and he'll be like, who's this? And it's a picture of my uncle at like a family gathering. How he got the picture, I do not know. But I explained to him like, that is my uncle. How do you have that picture? And he's like, you don't ask questions. It's my job to ask the questions. So you go through, this is just my story. Many Palestinians who go to Palestine go through the same thing. They ask you a number of questions, some of the questions you don't even have the answers for, and you have to keep your temper calm because you just don't want to be sent back. So 3 hours waiting there, and then on my way back was extremely horrible because so our flight was at 11:30. Driving into the airport, there's a checkpoint before entering the airport walls. They say it's a random check. They pull cars over, but you can tell when your car is pulled over, all the people surrounded by you are either Palestinian American or they're white Americans who are there to visit Palestine, not Israel. So we get checked there. They check all our bags, strip search us, and then they let us go. And they mark our bags that they already checked. And then when we get to the airport, you have to go through a check again before the bags enter the planes. So we waited in line for that, and then they take our bags, and then we have to wait on the side as they check our bags. That took about an hour. They maybe x-rayed a million things out of my bags, like a necklace, 15 minutes on a necklace. And then they took me and my friend back because we had to get strip searched again, which caused us to miss our flight. So then we had to fly standby the next one, which is at 3. And then because they decided that they need to strip search us again, we missed that flight. So we ended up having to sleep in the airport until the next day, which, by the way, we got strip searched twice again before. I don't know why, because we didn't leave the airport walls. But so it's a headache. It ended up taking us 3 days to get home. But that's not gonna stop me from going back. I've spent like almost every summer of my life in Palestine. And there's like always different experiences. I mean, I guess when I was younger, I didn't notice them as much. I mean, I was a child, so I was just busy having fun. I mean, as a kid, I noticed there little things like, oh, I'm not allowed to play outside like when it's nighttime. So, and it's a little weird because when I'm at home in Chicago, I'm allowed to play whenever I want outside. And then they tell you you're not allowed to play at night, but then you hear like children's voices at night playing outside who are the Israeli kids from the settlements. And like I guess I didn't fully understand that until like I grew up. So it's little things like that as a kid, and then growing up and then realizing it. As I got older, there's this one time where so when I went back, the most recent time I went back was in 2012. And it was part of the time I was there, it was Ramadan. And every Friday for Muslim people, it's a holy day, and they go and pray all together in Al-Aqsa, which is in Jerusalem. But at the same time, most Palestinians in the West Bank are not allowed into Jerusalem, unless you're an elderly woman or a young child. So one day my aunt came to me, and she was crying, and I didn't understand why. And she told me, she was like, I should be happy, but I'm not. And I'm like, what do you mean? She was like, they gave me a permit to go to Jerusalem. This is my first time in Jerusalem since I was a child. I'm able to go pray with everyone. And like, I'm like, that's good, like that's exciting, go. And she's like, but at the same time, she's like, it makes me realize how much I'm an animal to them. I'm waiting my whole life for this permit, and finally they give it to me, and I'm like, I'm sad about it. She's like, I'm gonna go, I might not come back.
Do you have an ideal way to see the conflict resolved?
I think if we zoom out, like, peacefully would be the resolution point. Hopefully that both sides can achieve, but on like a practical, technical level, I have no idea how I don't know enough about the conflict I don't know enough about the problem to even think about a solution. So I think you have to understand the problem really well before you can even start contemplating a solution.
I think any kind of solution has to start with the people. They have to live and understand that we're all human and we all deserve the same rights. And when you go there, you don't see that among the people. The Palestinian people who I talk to, all they want is just rights. They want to be able to live freely in their homeland, and they don't get that. So I really feel like it needs to start with the people, like the Israeli people and the Palestinian people, government aside, and like learning to live together. And they lived together before, so it can happen again.
What were your interactions with Israelis or Palestinians like in Jerusalem? Did you have any interactions with Palestinians or together, or just any kind of interactions like that?
I didn't. I was mostly in a Jewish environment. I didn't really interact with too many Arab people. Maybe a couple in like their marketplace, like the old kind of one of the most ancient parts of the city. It's called the Arab Shuk, the Arab Market. Everyone I met was friendly and looking for peace. You can see that there's sadness in the faces, but I think everyone that I've been exposed to definitely just wants it's tough. Everyone wants peace, but they kind of have different ideas about how that should be achieved on a personal, like human level, on a subjective level, but also on like an objective, like kind of divine and kind of necessary, absolute level. it's tough to reach when two absolute perspectives conflict, I guess. And that's probably on a simple, from a simple standpoint, that's probably what the conflict comes down to. Two different ideas for how peace is achieved.
One of the times I was being strip searched, I was being searched by a girl who was my age, and we were just talking normally. But there was there's obvious tension because she's an Israeli and I'm a Palestinian. But at the same time, what I think in my head, I'm like, it wasn't us that did this. This was like long before us when this happened. I don't understand why we can't be civil, But so when she was searching me, she kind of asked me about like what happened, and I told her that I had to spend the night. And then she actually looked me in the eye, and she apologized. She's like, I'm sorry. She's like, I'm sorry I have to do this to you because this is my job and this is what I'm told to do. I don't know why, but this is what I'm told to do, and I'm scared not to do it. And for me to but that connection right there, it's like just a human connection. It was nice to have. Because she is an Israeli and I'm a Palestinian, and it's known like there's this huge conflict and we can't be civil. Like little experiences like that, it gives me hope that there's a way to resolve it. But at the same time, we have to get rid of the hate first, and the understanding that everyone deserves to live the same way. So once people start showing that, and right now I don't think that's even happening. I mean, in this day and age where people are still racist and have hate for someone because of where they come from or who they are, it's hard to believe that there's going to be a positive outcome out of this. But you just have to have hope.